Marianne first saw the beauty of holiness while scraping bird droppings off the face of a saint whose name nobody in the town could remember. She was standing on a narrow scaffold inside an old church that smelled of dust, rainwater, candle wax, and neglect, holding a plastic scraper in one hand and a spray bottle in the other, staring at a stained glass figure with a cracked halo and one missing eye. The church had been closed for almost 9 years. The roof leaked, the pews were stacked against the walls, the hymnals had swollen from damp air. A family of sparrows had apparently considered the sanctuary a generous housing opportunity and treated the saints in the windows with democratic disrespect. Marianne had not come there looking for God. She had come because the restoration committee paid cash, because her hours at the clinic had been cut, because her rent had increased, because her daughter needed braces, because holiness, as far as she was concerned, was a word people used when they wanted to make ordinary women feel guilty for being tired. Yet there she was, 46 years old, knees aching, hair tied badly under a red bandana, cleaning filth from a forgotten saint's face, while the morning sun pushed through the dirty glass and threw bruised colors across her arms. "Well," she muttered to the saint, "you and I have both looked better." From below, an old man's voice said, "He looked worse before glory." Marianne startled so badly she almost dropped the scraper. "You cannot sneak up on people in a condemned church." The old man stood in the aisle with a thermos in one hand and a ring of keys in the other. His name was Arthur Bell, retired history teacher, widower, unofficial guardian of the building, and the kind of man who treated dust as if it had theological significance. "It is not condemned," he said. "It is temporarily humbled. The ceiling has a bucket collection. Many humbled things require buckets." Marianne climbed down 2 rungs, annoyed that her heart was still racing. "Are you here to supervise? I am here to make sure you do not clean St. Sebastian with bathroom chemicals. I have restored clinic floors after flu season. I respect surfaces." Arthur looked up at the window. "That is not St. Sebastian." "Then who is it?" He hesitated. Marianne saw it and smiled. "You don't know either. I am narrowing the possibilities. So he is unknown." Arthur's face softened. "Unknown to us." Marianne looked back at the stained glass figure. A robed man, one hand lifted, the other holding what might once have been a book. His face was half hidden beneath years of grime. His halo was cracked through the middle. Blue and gold glass surrounded him, though the gold had dulled to the color of old tea. "Why restore a window when nobody knows who he is?" she asked. Arthur was quiet for a moment. "Because beauty does not stop being beauty when people forget its name." The sentence irritated her because it sounded like something that wanted to be profound. She preferred useful sentences. "Pay this bill. Turn left. Take with food. Results in 3 days. Do not mix bleach and ammonia." Beauty had not paid her electric bill. Holiness had not kept her marriage from ending. Saints in glass had not sat with her daughter Lily when anxiety attacks made the child shake so hard she could not hold a pencil. Marianne sprayed the window and began scraping again. "I'm just here to clean it." Arthur nodded. "That is often where holiness begins." She almost laughed. "With bird droppings? With what is actually there?" That was the first lesson from the saints, though Marianne would not have called it that yet. Holiness does not begin with pretending the dirt is not there. It begins by letting God touch what has actually covered the image. Marianne had spent years thinking holy people were clean people, not clean as in showered or organized, though she suspected many of them were both. Clean as in untouched by the things that made her feel stained. Resentment, impatience, envy, old fantasies of being vindicated. The way she sometimes looked at other families in church parking lots and hated them for seeming intact. The way she loved her daughter fiercely, but occasionally wanted 1 hour in which no one needed her name. If holiness meant never having such things inside, then holiness was for stained glass, not flesh. But as she wiped the saint's cheek, The cloth came away black, and beneath the black was not a different window. It was the same face, clearer. The dirt had not become the identity. It had hidden it. By noon, sun filled the nave in broken strips. Marianne climbed down to eat a sandwich on the back step. Lily had texted from school, "Forgot math folder. Don't be mad." Marianne stared at the message longer than necessary. Her first impulse was anger, not because of the folder only, but because every forgotten thing became part of a larger trial in her head. The folder, the Volder, the braziers, the rent, the cut hours, the ex-husband who remembered birthdays but not insurance forms, the church job that smelled like mildew. She typed, "Seriously," then deleted it. Typed, "You need to be more responsible." Deleted that too. Finally, she typed, "I'll bring it before work. Breathe." She stared at the word breathe. It was the word she had told Lily 100 times and herself almost never. When she drove home for the folder, she found it exactly where Lily had probably left it in a panic, half under the kitchen table. Beside it was a sketchbook. Marianne meant only to move it. It fell open. Inside was a drawing of the old church window she had described the night before. Lily had drawn the saint with a cracked halo, but instead of making him solemn, she had given him tired eyes and a small bandage on his cheek. Underneath she had written, "Maybe holy means still glowing when cracked." Marianne stood in the kitchen with the math folder in one hand and the sketchbook in the other, and something in her chest shifted painfully. Her daughter, who hated Sunday school because people asked cheerful questions when she felt like crying, had understood more from a broken window than Marianne had understood from years of hearing the word holiness as an accusation. That was the second lesson. Holiness is not the absence of cracks, it is the presence of God's light in a life that has stopped hiding them. The Titans, they were never wounded. Jacob limped, David wept. Peter denied, Thomas doubted. Mary Magdalene carried a past that people would have used to define her if Jesus had not spoken her name. Paul had blood in his history. Augustine had restless desires. Francis stripped himself of borrowed glory. Teresa prayed through dryness. So many holy lives were not smooth glass. They were broken pieces surrendered to a light not their own. Marianne closed the sketchbook carefully and delivered the folder to Lily's school. Lily came to the office with red eyes, embarrassed and defensive. "I know. I forgot again." Marianne handed it to her. "I saw your drawing." Lily stiffened. "You looked. It fell open. That is what criminals say. Fair." Marianne smiled weakly. "It was beautiful." Lily looked down. "It's weird. Maybe. Beautiful things often are." Lily hugged the folder to her chest. "Are you mad?" Marianne almost said no, but that would not have been honest. "I was, more than the folder deserved." Lily looked up. "That happens to you a lot. Children can speak with surgical precision because they do not yet know all the social rules that protect adults from truth." Marianne inhaled. She said. Lily blinked, surprised that her mother had not defended herself. "I'll try not to forget again. And I'll try not to make every mistake feel like the end of the world." Lily nodded slowly. "Okay." Tall, glowing window. Just a mother and daughter in a school office, both a little ashamed, both still loved. That was the third lesson. Holiness becomes beautiful when truth and tenderness finally stand in the same room. Marianne returned to the church later than planned. Arthur was in the side chapel, sorting old hymnals into piles. "The saints survived your absence," he said. "Good. I brought him no lunch." He pointed to the scaffold. "You made progress." She looked up, still cracked, still missing one eye. But the lifted hand had emerged from the grime, 2 fingers raised in blessing. She had not noticed the gesture before. "He is blessing a room full of bird mess and buckets," she said. Arthur smiled. "Saints often do." She climbed back up and worked until late afternoon. As the glass cleared, more details appeared. A small flame near the book, a tear-shaped piece of red glass near the heart, a blue border filled with tiny lilies. "Why lilies?" she called down. Arthur was reading from an old parish record he had found in a cabinet. Purity, resurrection, sometimes Mary, sometimes the saints, depends on the artist. These lilies are chipped. Purity in this world often is. You always answer, like a plaque. Retirement gives a man time to become inconvenient. Marianne rubbed at a stubborn patch near the saint's mouth. The stain would not lift. She sprayed again, wiped harder. Nothing. Arthur called up, "Careful. I know. Some stains require patience. Some stains require stronger solvent. And some glass is damaged by the strength you think will save it." She stopped. The words landed too close to home. She thought of Lily, of the way fear made her voice harsher than she intended, of the way she had once tried to rescue her marriage through constant correction until the house became a courtroom, of the way she treated her own soul like a surface to be scrubbed into worthiness. She lowered the cloth. That was the fourth lesson. Holiness is not violence against the self, it is patient surrender to the cleansing God knows how to do without destroying the glass. Many people think holiness means hating yourself enough to become acceptable, but the saints did not become holy by despising the image of God in them. They became holy by surrendering everything that obscured it. There is a difference between repentance and self-contempt. Repentance brings sin into the mercy of God. Self-contempt tries to punish the soul into purity. One leads to transformation, the other leads to despair, with religious vocabulary. Marianne did not know she believed that until the stained glass mouth refused to be scrubbed clean. She changed cloths, waited, worked more gently. Slowly, the dark patch softened, not completely. Enough. At 5, the church door opened and a woman in a navy coat entered carrying a cardboard box. She was younger than Arthur, older than Marianne, with silver hair cut sharply at her jaw and a face that looked both kind and difficult to impress. "You must be Marianne," she said. "Depends who is asking." "Evelyn Shaw, Restoration Committee." "Ah, Restoration Committee. Ah, my employers. More like 5 tired people with a dream and a checking account too small for it." Marianne climbed down. Evelyn looked up at the window and grew quiet. "I was baptized under that glass," she said. Evelyn shook her head. "No, but I remember the colors. When I was a child, the whole floor looked like jewels on Sunday mornings." She opened the box. Inside were old photographs, brittle programs, folded letters, and a small metal plaque. "Found these in my attic." Arthur came over quickly. "You had parish records in your attic. My husband was treasurer. Then he died. Then I avoided boxes for 11 years. Grief is not a filing system." Marianne liked her immediately. Arthur lifted the plaque and read the inscription aloud. "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Evelyn looked at the window. So perhaps not a named saint, perhaps a window of purity itself. Marianne almost groaned. "That sounds personal." "Everything is personal if you are tired enough." Evelyn smiled. Then she stepped closer to the glass fragments laid out on a work table, pieces removed from a lower panel that had broken years before. The fragments looked dull until the sun caught them. Then blue flashed like water, red like a coal, green like spring grass after rain. Evelyn picked up one small gold piece. "My husband used to say holiness was the only beauty that survives being touched by death." Arthur's face softened. Marianne did not know what to say. Evelyn placed the gold piece back down. "I thought that was too poetic when he was alive. After he died, I needed it to be true." That was the 5th lesson. Holiness is beautiful because it belongs to eternity, and therefore it can walk through loss without becoming meaningless. The beauty the world sells is terrified of age, weakness, obscurity, and death. It must be photographed quickly, praised loudly, preserved artificially, defended against time. But holy beauty can sit beside a hospital bed. It can wash feet. It can forgive an enemy. It can sing in prison. It can bless while being misunderstood. It can bury a spouse and still bring soup to someone else. It can grow more luminous as the body grows frail, because its source is not the body's power, but God's life within it. Marianne thought of Evelyn avoiding boxes for 11 years and still bringing them now. She thought of Arthur, guarding a church most people called useless. She thought of Lily's cracked saint glowing. Maybe holiness was not the cold, pale thing she had imagined. Maybe holiness had color. Maybe it was costly, because all true beauty is. Over the next week, the window became Marianne's private argument with God. Every morning she arrived with coffee, gloves, cloths, and a mood Arthur described as weather. Every day the saint emerged more clearly. The missing eye would need a new piece of glass. The lilies would be cleaned. The book would regain its flame. The raised hand would bless again. And each day Marianne found another part of herself resisting what the window seemed to say. On Tuesday she found an old mirror in the sacristy, spotted with age, and used it to tie her bandana. Her reflection looked tired and blunt. She saw grey near her temples, lines around her mouth, a small burn scar from an oven rack, shoulders rounded from years of carrying too many bags at once. Not exactly saint material, she said. Arthur, who appeared at doors with the timing of a biblical inconvenience, said, "Saint material is dust and grace." Marianne rolled her eyes. "Do you practice these?" "No. I simply refuse to waste good silence." He handed her a file folder. "I found something." Inside were photocopied pages about the artists who had made the windows almost a century earlier. A small workshop, immigrant craftsmen, low pay, long hours, no famous names. So unknown people made an unknown saint for a church that closed, Marianne said. "That is depressing." Arthur looked at the window. "Or holy. How? They made beauty they would not become famous for people who would not remember them, before a God who forgets nothing." That was the sixth lesson. Holiness is willing to be faithful where applause will never reach. Marianne disliked that lesson most of all. She had not realized how much of her bitterness came from feeling unseen. She cleaned rooms no one thanked her for, answered messages no one noticed, managed Lily's appointments, insurance forms, meals, school needs, panic attacks, and grocery lists. At the clinic, she cared for patients who sometimes complained more than they thanked. At church, back when she still volunteered, she had washed coffee urns after people praised the worship team. She had told herself she did not need recognition. That was mostly false. She wanted someone to see, to say, "This cost you," to say, "You are doing well," to say, "The hidden years count." Of the dim days, not all of them. Some were publicly honored, even in their lifetimes, but the path to holiness always passes through places where only God sees truly. Jesus said, "When you give, do not announce it with trumpets. When you pray, go into your room. Your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." Marianne had heard that as a warning. Now it sounded like comfort. The Father sees in secret, not vaguely, not occasionally, sees. On Wednesday, Lily came to the church after school because Marianne's shift ran long. She climbed into a pew with her sketchbook and headphones, though one ear remained uncovered, which meant she was pretending not to listen. "This place is creepy." Lily, it is temporarily humbled. Lily looked at Marianne. "You've been talking to Mr. Bell too much." Arthur from the aisle said, "Wisdom spreads." Lily drew while Marianne cleaned a lower panel. After a while, Lily asked, "Were saints lonely?" Marianne paused. Arthur did not answer, which meant he knew the question was not for him. "Probably some of them," Marianne said. "Why?" Lily kept drawing. "They always look calm in pictures, like they never had lunch alone." Marianne sat back on her heels. The question pierced her because it was not about saints. "I think pictures can lie by being too still," she said. "I think holy people were probably lonely, scared, awkward, misunderstood, annoying sometimes, and hungry at inconvenient times." Lily glanced up. "Annoying saints?" "Definitely," Arthur called. "Some of the greatest." Lily smiled. Marianne added, Maybe holiness does not mean you stop feeling human. Maybe it means God's love becomes stronger in you than the fear of being human. Lily looked down at her sketchbook. That's good. Marianne tried not to look too pleased. That was the 7th lesson. Holiness does not erase humanity. It heals it until ordinary human life becomes transparent to God. Some people imagine holiness as floating above need, personality, humor, grief, hunger, desire, and weakness. But Jesus, the Holy One, became flesh. He slept in boats, wept at tombs, ate with friends, noticed children, asked for water, felt compassion, grew tired, loved particular faces. Holiness is not becoming less human. Sin makes us less human. Fear makes us less human. Envy, lust, greed, pride, resentment, these shrink the soul. Holiness restores the human person to communion with God, where laughter can become clean, tears can become prayer, work can become offering, and even loneliness can become a place where Christ sits near. Lily returned to her drawing. Marianne returned to the glass. The lower panel showed lilies growing from dark soil. She cleaned one petal at a time. Dirt, rinse, cloth, light. Dirt, rinse, cloth, light. Dirt, rinse, cloth, light. It became almost like breathing. On Friday, the restoration team discovered rot behind a section of wood framing. The repair would cost more. The budget was already thin. Evelyn looked at the estimate and pressed her fingers to her forehead. Arthur said, "We expected trouble." "I expected trouble with a smaller invoice," Evelyn replied. The committee gathered in the nave. Evelyn, Arthur, 2 brothers named Paul and Martin, who disagreed about everything except donuts, and a quiet woman named June, who kept records in handwriting so beautiful it made grocery lists look sacred. Marianne stood nearby, technically not part of the committee, but covered in enough church dust to feel implicated. Paul said they should pause the window work until funds were clearer. Martin said pausing would make everything more expensive later. Evelyn said there were only so many times she could ask the same 30 people for money. June said nothing, then opened a folder and placed a photograph on the table. It showed the church decades earlier, full of people, children in white robes, women with hats, men in suits, sun pouring through the holiness window, casting lilies across the aisle. June tapped the photograph. "They built what they could not keep forever," she said. "So will we. That is not failure." The room quieted. That was the 8th lesson. Holiness accepts that earthly work is temporary, without using that as an excuse to make it careless. The saints built, served, wrote, prayed, fed, taught, planted, and repaired in a world passing away. They knew moth and rust destroy. They knew bodies die, churches close, names fade, empires collapse, gardens wither, children leave, memories blur. Yet they did not conclude, then nothing matters. Then nothing must be offered. Temporary things become holy, not because they last forever, but because love touches them in obedience to the eternal God. Marianne looked at the photograph and imagined the floor covered in colored light. Those people had sung, worried, baptized babies, buried parents, argued about budgets, spilled coffee, whispered prayers, and assumed the church would remain. It had not, and yet the window still waited. The work was not meaningless because it had become fragile. On Saturday morning, Marianne arrived early and found Arthur in the front pew, alone, holding a small black Bible. He did not hear her enter, or pretended not to. His shoulders were bowed. The church, for once, felt less like a project and more like a sanctuary. Marianne almost backed out, but a floorboard betrayed her. Arthur looked up and wiped his face quickly. "Allergies," he said. "To humility," he laughed once, then sighed. "To memory." She sat 2 pews behind him, leaving space. After a while, he said, "My wife loved this window. She said the lilies looked like they were growing out of heaven and dirt at the same time." "That sounds like her." "You did not know her." "No, but I know your sentences. You got them from somewhere." He smiled faintly. Probably. He looked at the window. I stopped coming here after she died. Then the church closed, and I was angry that something else had left, so I kept the keys. That sounds like grief pretending to be administration. It was very organized grief. Marianne smiled. Arthur's voice softened. I thought holiness would make dying feel less like theft. The honesty in the room became almost visible. When she died, I felt robbed. Still do sometimes. But holiness kept theft from becoming the only name for her life. She belonged to God before she belonged to me. This sentence for a while, then it saved me. That was the 9th lesson. Holiness teaches us to love deeply without claiming ownership over what belongs first to God. Marianne thought of Lily, of how fear sometimes made motherhood feel like possession baptized in concern. Thought of her ex-husband, whom she still punished in imaginary arguments long after court papers were signed. Thought of patients whose outcomes she could not control, people whose pain she could ease but not always heal. Holiness did not make love smaller, it made love truer. It taught the heart to hold people with reverence, instead of clutching them as proof of identity or safety. Arthur closed the Bible. She underlined, "Be holy, because I am holy." I used to think holiness meant moral achievement. She said it meant belonging to God so completely that his life starts showing through yours. Marianne looked up at the cracked halo. The morning sun had reached it now. The crack caught light, not despite the crack, along it. That was the 10th lesson. Holiness is not self-improvement polished enough to impress God. It is belonging so deeply to God that his beauty begins to shine through even the damaged places. The world offers improvement. Better habits, better image, better body, better productive, better emotional regulation. Some of that can be useful, but holiness is deeper and stranger. It is not merely a better version of the old self. It is a life set apart, filled, cleansed, reordered, surrendered, and made radiant by communion with the Holy One. It is not cosmetic, it is consecration. Marianne stayed quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I don't think I know how to belong to God like that. Most of us begin by admitting we don't." That sounds like a trick. It is called poverty of spirit. Another plaque sentence. A true one. She looked at her hands, rough from cleaning solution, nails short, a small cut near one thumb. "I'm not holy, Arthur." "No." She looked up sharply. He smiled. "You are not finished either." The sentence should have offended her. Instead, it steadied something. Not finished. Not clean enough yet. Not patient enough. Not free of bitterness. Not done being formed, but not discarded. Not fake because unfinished. Not excluded from beauty because grime remained. Outside, traffic passed. Inside, dust moved through colored light like tiny wandering planets. Marianne stood and climbed the scaffold again. The saint's missing eye waited for replacement. The crack in the halo waited for patience. The whole window waited for hands willing to work on beauty they had not created and could not own. She sprayed the cloth, touched it to the glass, and began again. The next Monday, Marianne found Lily sitting on the church floor under the Holiness window, drawing the saint with both eyes restored, even though the new glass had not arrived yet. "That is optimistic," Marianne said. Lily did not look up. "It's not optimism, it's a draft." Marianne smiled and climbed the scaffold. The old missing eye had become strangely personal by then, a small dark absence in a face that otherwise grew clearer every day. The replacement glass had been ordered from a studio 2 counties away, but delays had become the rhythm of the project. Everything took longer than promised. The wood framing, the budget approval, the cleaning, the glass, the committee decisions, the weather. Even holiness, Marianne thought, seemed to move at the speed of old people with paperwork. She scrubbed the blue border while Lily shaded the saint's robe. After a while, Lily said, "Do you think people become holy because they try really hard?" Marianne almost answered automatically, then stopped. "I think trying matters," she said, "but not the way people think. Lily tapped her pencil against the sketchbook. That is not an answer. I learned from Arthur, from the Isle, Arthur said. My influence is being honored. Marianne ignored him. I think trying hard can make you proud if you think holiness is something you manufacture, or it can make you despair if you keep failing. Maybe the saints tried hard, but not to prove they were worthy. They tried because love had started pulling them in a new direction. Lily thought about that. So not like extra credit for God? No. Good. I hate extra credit. Arthur called. The saints were not applying for scholarships. Lily smiled, then returned to the drawing. Marianne wiped another section of glass, and the light brightened around the saint's lifted hand. That was the 11th lesson. Holiness is not human effort replacing grace. It is grace teaching human effort how to love. The Apostle Paul said he worked hard, yet not he, but the grace of God with him. That strange partnership stood beneath every saintly life. Grace did not make obedience unnecessary. Grace made obedience possible. It turned effort from self-salvation into response. It taught tired hands to serve without worshipping usefulness. It taught wounded hearts to forgive without pretending the wound did not matter. It taught ordinary people to fast, pray, repent, give, stay, speak, wait, and endure, not because they were earning God's love, but because they had begun to live from it. Marianne wished someone had told her that earlier. Maybe she had not been able to hear it through the noise of guilt. At the clinic that afternoon, she had to assist Mrs. Delgado, an elderly patient who disliked waiting, disliked forms, disliked new nurses, disliked old nurses, and apparently disliked chairs because she complained about every chair in the waiting room. Marianne had known her for years. Mrs. Delgado had arthritis, sharp perfume, and a gift for making requests sound like accusations. "This place gets slower every month," she said, as Marianne took her blood pressure. "We are trying our best. It is what people see when they are on a diet." Marianne tightened the cuff. Not enough to hurt. Enough to reveal she wanted to. Mrs. Delgado looked at her. "You are angry today. Your blood pressure is angry today. Do not joke with me. I am old, not stupid." Marianne almost snapped. She was tired from the church, tired from work, tired from bills, tired from being treated like a container for other people's irritation. But then she looked at Mrs. Delgado's hands, swollen at the knuckles, one ring stuck permanently where a wedding band had once moved freely. Pain makes people difficult. So does fear. So does loneliness. That did not excuse cruelty, but it complicated the story. Marianne loosened the cuff. "You're right," she said. Mrs. Delgado blinked. "About what?" "I'm angry today." The old woman studied her. "Why?" Marianne could have said none of your business. Instead, she said, "Because I feel like everyone needs something from me, and I'm not sure there's enough of me left to give." Mrs. Delgado was quiet. Then she looked away. That is a familiar kind of anger. The room shifted, not into sweetness, into truth. Marianne finished the reading. Mrs. Delgado's blood pressure was high. They talked about medication. Before she left, Mrs. Delgado said, "My husband used to tell me I was sharp because I was scared." Was he right? Mrs. Delgado's mouth tightened. Often, annoyingly. Marianne smiled. Mrs. Delgado added, "Do not let fear make you ugly, dear. It will tell you it is protecting you." The sentence followed Marianne back to the church that evening. That was the 12th lesson. Holiness does not make sin look small. It makes sin look ugly without making the sinner look hopeless. Modern people often confuse mercy with pretending sin is harmless. Others confuse holiness with treating sinners as disgusting. The saints did neither. They saw sin clearly because they had seen God's beauty. Greed was ugly because generosity was beautiful. Lust was ugly because love was beautiful. Pride was ugly because humility was beautiful. Resentment was ugly because humility was beautiful. Resentment was ugly because trust was beautiful, but the sinner was never beyond mercy. The same Jesus who said, "Go and sin no more," first stood between the accused woman and the stones. Holiness without mercy becomes cruelty. Mercy without holiness becomes sentiment. In Christ, both stood together, and the saints learned to live in that brightness. Marianne did not want fear making her ugly. She had seen it happen in small ways. Her voice sharpened, her face hardened, her jokes turned poisonous. Her prayers became complaints with Lord attached. That night, she stood before the window and looked at the saint's missing eye. "You see anything with the one you've got?" she muttered. Arthur, from behind a stack of wood trim, said, "More than we do with two, perhaps. You need a bell. I am not a cat." She turned. "Mrs. Delgado told me not to let fear make me ugly." Arthur nodded. Excellent advice from a woman who weaponizes perfume. Truth sometimes arrives heavily scented. Marianne laughed, then felt the laugh loosen something in her chest. On Wednesday, the replacement glass arrived. The studio had wrapped the small pieces in paper, each one labeled in careful handwriting. The new eye was a deep brown with a fleck of amber near the center. Marianne held it up to the light. It glowed like tea with honey. Lily, who had come after school again, whispered, "It looks alive." Evelyn arrived early to watch the installation. June came too, carrying a notebook. Paul and Martin stood with arms folded, pretending they had opinions about glass technique. Arthur climbed the scaffold with more dignity than safety warranted, then allowed Marianne to take the final step because her hands had done most of the cleaning. The Blazier, a quiet woman named Celeste, guided the piece into place. Lead came around it like a careful border. Putties sealed the edges. For a moment, nothing changed. Then the sun moved from behind a cloud and struck the window. The saint looked back, not perfectly. The new glass was slightly brighter than the old. The repaired eye did not match the weathered one exactly. The face would always carry evidence of loss and restoration in the same gaze. Lily whispered, "He looks like he's been through something." Evelyn answered, "He has." Marianne stepped down slowly. Her throat felt tight. That was the 13th lesson. Holiness does not always erase the evidence of damage. Sometimes it makes the repair part of the beauty. The resurrected Christ kept his wounds. That had always unsettled Marianne. If anyone could have returned unmarked, surely he could. Yet he showed Thomas his hands and side. Glory did not deny the crucifixion. It transformed its meaning. The saints carry wounds too. Some visible, some hidden, some caused by others, some by their own sin, some caused by others, some by their own sin, some healed into compassion, some still aching while they serve. Holiness is not pretending nothing happened. It is letting Christ enter what happened until even scars become witnesses, not masters. Lily stood beside Marianne, staring up. If they fixed him perfectly, he would look fake. Marianne nodded. "Yes." Lily leaned against her slightly. "I think I like him better this way." Marianne put an arm around her daughter and kissed the top of her head. Lily allowed it for 3 seconds, then moved away. That was enough affection. Understood. The next days brought a different kind of test. Once the face was restored, people began visiting. Word spread through town that the old Holiness window was coming back. A local reporter called. Someone posted photographs online. Comments appeared. Beautiful, historic, so inspiring. Does anyone know when the church reopens? My grandmother was married there. We should save places like this. Suddenly, the hidden work was not hidden anymore. Evelyn was pleased. Arthur pretended not to be. Paul and Martin argued over whether the reporter should mention the budget. June updated the records with ceremonial seriousness. Marianne found herself irritated by the attention, then irritated that she was irritated. She had wanted hidden work to count. Now that people saw it, she suspected they saw it wrongly. They praised the glass, but not the scraping. They admired the colors but did not smell the mildew. They took photos of the lifted hand, but not the trash bags, invoices, gloves, splinters, and dead insects in the sill. One afternoon, while a woman photographed the window from the aisle, Marianne muttered, "Now everyone loves it." Arthur heard her. "Of course he did. Does that offend you?" "No. That was quick and false," she sighed. "Maybe. They didn't care when it was filthy." Arthur looked at the woman taking pictures. "Most people need help seeing beauty before they know what has been buried." "That sounds generous." "It is sometimes wise to try generosity before contempt. Contempt is easy and rarely accurate." Marianne hated how often Arthur was inconveniently right. That was the 14th lesson. Holiness receives recognition without feeding on it, and accepts obscurity without turning bitter. The saints were not all unknown. Some preached before crowds, some advised kings, some became famous despite themselves, others died in villages no history book remembers. The issue was not whether people saw them. The issue was whether being seen became their food. Jesus said to let your light shine before others so they may glorify your Father in heaven. He also warned against practicing righteousness to be seen by people. Both truths stand together. Holy people do not hide light out of false humility, and they do not perform light for praise. They become windows. A window does not boast about the sun. It also does not apologize for shining when the sun passes through. Marianne looked up at the Holiness window. For weeks, she had been cleaning it. Now it had to do what windows do, let light through for people who had not watched the labor. That should have been enough. She was not sure it was yet, but she wanted it to be. On Friday evening, the committee held a small gathering in the half-restored nave. Not a formal reopening. The roof still needed work, the pews were not all repaired, and the heating system made noises like a discouraged animal. But Evelyn insisted they should mark the moment the window was whole again. "Whole-ish," Marianne said. Evelyn smiled. "Most holy things are whole-ish until resurrection." They set up folding chairs. Someone brought coffee. Someone brought cookies. Ruth Ann would have approved, Marianne thought, though she did not know anyone named Ruth Ann and had no idea why the thought felt like it belonged to a larger communion of church. Women with strong opinions and baked goods. Lily placed her drawing of the cracked saint near the front, reluctantly, after Marianne promised not to make it weird. Arthur brought his wife's Bible and placed it on the small wooden table beneath the window, open to 1 Peter. Evelyn brought the old plaque, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." People came, more than expected. Older members who had once worshipped there. Neighbors curious about the restoration. A few teenagers who followed Lily because they had heard there would be cookies. Mrs. Delgado arrived in a purple coat, declared the chairs unacceptable, and sat in one anyway. Marianne nearly laughed when she saw her. The evening sun lowered slowly. At first the window looked beautiful but ordinary. Then, as Arthur began reading from 1 Peter, the light shifted. Color spilled across the floor. Blue first, then gold, then red near the saint's heart. The cracked halo burned bright along the sealed fracture. The lilies at the border scattered pale shapes across the aisle. People grew quiet, not because anyone asked them to, because beauty had entered the room with authority. Arthur read, "Be holy, because I am holy." His voice trembled on the last word. Marianne looked around. Evelyn crying without wiping her face. June with both hands folded over her notebook. Paul and Martin silent for once. Lily staring at her own drawing as if it had become part of something larger than paper. Mrs. Delgado watching the colors on her swollen hands. The unknown saint blessing them all. The room smelled of dust and coffee, old wood and damp stone, cookies and candle wax. Not perfect, holy. That was the 15th lesson. The beauty of holiness is not that holy people become impressive, but that through them, others begin to see God. He received it and gave it away. That is all the saints ever do. Mary does not keep glory for herself. She says, "My soul magnifies the Lord." John the Baptist says, "He must increase, I must decrease." Paul says, "Not I, but Christ lives in me." Peter, restored after denial, strengthens his brothers. Stephen, dying under stones, reflects the mercy of the crucified Christ. Francis kisses the leper and reveals a kingdom where the despised are not despised. Teresa serves the poorest and makes hidden love visible. The holy ones are beautiful because they are no longer opaque. God shines through them, not because they were flawless glass, because they were surrendered glass. Marianne felt something in herself ache toward that kind of life, not toward being admired, not toward being called saintly by people who did not know how impatient she could be before breakfast. My fear, less quick to contempt, less ashamed of cracks, less hungry for recognition, more truthful, more tender, more available to God's light in ordinary rooms. After Arthur finished reading, Evelyn asked if anyone wanted to speak. Marianne immediately looked at the floor because public speaking sounded like a punishment invented by extroverts. Lily nudged her. "No," Lily whispered. "You should. Absolutely not. Cowardice is not holiness." Marianne turned slowly. "Who taught you that tone?" Lily looked toward Arthur. Arthur looked innocent with the practiced skill of old men. Evelyn waited. The room waited. Marianne stood before she could make a better decision. "I'm not good at this," she began. "Excellent opening," Mrs. Delgado said. A few people laughed. Marianne took a breath. "When I started cleaning this window, I thought holiness was basically a word for people who were better than me and wanted me to know it. I thought saints were smooth, clean, calm people who never snapped at their children, never resented bills, never wanted to run away, never felt cracked straight through the middle." Lily watched her. Marianne looked at the window. But this window was filthy and broken and still beautiful underneath. Or maybe not underneath only. Maybe the beauty is also in what happened while it was being cleaned and repaired. She looked at Mrs. Mize, Delgado's hands, Evelyn's tears, Arthur's Bible, Lily's drawing. "I think I used to believe holiness meant becoming untouchable. Now I think it means becoming touchable by God, letting Him reach the dirt, the cracks, the places we would rather keep dim, and then, somehow, letting His light pass through without pretending it came from us." The room stayed quiet. Marianne's voice shook. "So maybe the path to holiness is not escaping ordinary life. Maybe it is letting God make ordinary life transparent. The clinic, the kitchen, the school office, the church with buckets, the apology you do not want to make, the anger you finally stop calling protection, the hidden work, the wound you let Christ repair without forcing it to disappear, the person you love without owning, the beauty you make for God even if no one remembers your name." She stopped because if she continued, she would cry in a way she preferred not to do publicly. Lily had no such preference. She was crying openly. Arthur removed his glasses. Evelyn whispered, "Amen." After the gathering, people stayed longer than expected. Some shared memories of the old church. Some asked about volunteering. Mrs. Delgado told Marianne the chairs were terrible, but the window was not entirely disappointing, which Marianne accepted as high praise. Lily showed her sketch to a girl from school who said, "That's actually cool," in the reverent tone teenagers use when admitting admiration under protest. Arthur stood beneath the window with his wife's Bible pressed to his chest. Evelyn found Marianne near the back. "You spoke well. I blacked out spiritually." "That is one way to describe grace." Marianne smiled. Evelyn looked up at the window. "We still have much to repair. Do you stay on?" Marianne thought of her cut hours, rent, braces, exhaustion, the clinic, Lily, the strange way this old church had become a mirror she had not asked for. "If you can keep paying me." "Not much." "I did not assume much." Evelyn nodded. "Then yes?" Marianne looked at the saint's restored eye. "Yes." The work continued. That is important. Beauty did not mean the project ended. Holiness did not mean Marianne became instantly patient. The next week, she snapped at Lily over laundry and had to apologize. She silently judged a woman at the clinic, then caught herself and repented while restocking gloves. She envied a friend's vacation photos with such intensity that she had to put her phone in a drawer and go outside. She argued with the insurance company and lost her temper on hold, which felt both understandable and not entirely sanctified. She did not become stained glass. She remained flesh, but something had changed. Not everything. Enough. When resentment rose, she noticed faster. When shame spoke, she answered differently. When Lily cracked a joke to hide fear, Marianne listened longer. When hidden work felt unseen, she remembered the immigrant craftsman who made beauty without fame. When grief made Arthur quiet, she did not rush to fix it. When Mrs. Delgado complained, Marianne sometimes imagined fear wearing perfume and found mercy easier. Sometimes. Not always. Holiness, she learned, was not a mood. It was not a personality. It was not religious prettiness. It was the slow, costly, radiant work of belonging to God in a world that leaves fingerprints on every surface. Months later, the church reopened for a small service. The roof still needed attention. The heating system still complained. The pews did not match, but people came. Lily sat beside Marianne wearing boots. Evelyn called aggressively modern. Arthur read scripture. Evelyn welcomed everyone. June had printed programs with the Holiness window on the front. The unknown saint looked down with one old eye and one repaired eye. Cracked halo sealed, lilies shining, book aflame, hand raised in blessing. Sun poured through him onto the floor, across shoes and canes and folding chairs, across Lily's sketchbook, across Mrs. Delgado's purple coat, across Marianne's hands. During the final hymn, Marianne did not sing at first. She watched the colors move, blue over dust, gold over scars in the wood, red over the aisle where sparrows had once ruled. Light did not ask whether the room deserved it. It entered because that is what light does when a window opens. Lily leaned close and whispered, "Are you crying?" Marianne wiped her cheek. "Allergies." Arthur from the pew ahead said without turning around, "To humility." Lily laughed softly. Marianne did too. Then she sang. Not loudly, not beautifully enough to impress anyone, but truly. After the service, she stayed behind to help stack chairs. Holy people, she suspected, stacked chairs, probably badly sometimes, probably while tired, probably while wanting someone else to do it. She carried two at a time toward the side wall. Lily helped without being asked, which Marianne wisely did not mention. Mrs. Delgado ordered the teenagers around with alarming effectiveness. Evelyn counted donations. Arthur locked a side door, then paused under the window. Marianne stood beside him. For a while, neither spoke. "Do you think Payfield glowed in late afternoon light? Do you think people will remember who made it?" Marianne asked. Arthur shook his head. "Probably not. That bothers me." "Good." She looked at him. He smiled. "It means you are still human." Sheila looked back at the glass. "But God knows." "Yes, and that has to become enough." Arthur considered. "It does not become enough by force. It becomes enough by love." Marianne nodded slowly. That sounded true. Hard. True. She thought of all 15 lessons the window had been teaching without numbering them on the glass. Let God clean what is actually there. Do not despise cracks that let light speak. Let truth and tenderness stand together. Do not scrub the soul with violence. Seek the beauty that survives death. Be faithful where applause will never reach. Let holiness heal your humanity, not erase it. Offer temporary work to the eternal God. Love without ownership belongs so deeply that God's beauty shines through damage. Let grace teach effort how to love. Hate sin without surrendering sinners to hopelessness. Let repair become witness. Receive recognition without feeding on it, and hiddenness without bitterness. Become a window through which others see God. Marianne did not say all that aloud. Some things become weaker when spoken too soon. Instead, she lifted her hand toward the saint, not waving exactly, not praying exactly, maybe both. "Well," she whispered. "You look better," Arthur said. "So do you." She rolled her eyes. Do not make it sentimental. I would never. You absolutely would. He laughed and walked toward the back. Marianne remained beneath the window a moment longer. She thought of Lily's drawing. Maybe holy means still glowing when cracked. She thought that maybe Lily had been closer than anyone. Holiness was not a porcelain life kept safe on a shelf. It was not a face without tears, hands without scars, a history without failure, a heart without struggle. Holiness was beauty set apart for God and therefore made available to love. It was the image uncovered, the wound surrendered, the hidden task offered, the selfish impulse named and brought to mercy, the ordinary day opened to eternal light. It was not less fierce than she had feared. It was more beautiful than she had imagined. And if you are afraid of holiness because you think it will make you cold, small, severe, false, or less yourself, look again at the saints. Look at the ones who wept, laughed, confessed, served, failed, returned, forgave, built, prayed, sang, suffered, and shone. Look at Peter, who fell and was restored. Look at Mary Magdalene, who heard her name in a garden. Look at Paul, whose violence became witness. Look at the unnamed faithful who made windows, washed bodies, fed children, visited prisoners, endured grief, and were never quoted in history books. Look at Jesus, the Holy One, touching lepers, blessing children, weeping at Lazarus's tomb, washing feet, carrying the cross, rising with wounds still visible. Holiness is beautiful because Jesus is beautiful. The saints are not the source of the light. They are proof that the light can pass through human lives, even cracked ones, especially surrendered ones. Marianne turned off the last work lamp. The church dimmed, but the window held the remaining light, a little longer than seemed reasonable. She picked up Lily's sketchbook from the pew, her gloves from the floor, and the cloth she had used that first day, now washed but permanently stained. At the door, she looked back once more. The saints' raised hands seemed to bless the buckets, the patched roof, the mismatched chairs, the old griefs, the new volunteers, the hidden craftsmen, the difficult patients, the anxious daughters, the tired mothers, the unknown names, the unfinished souls. Marianne stepped outside into the evening. The street was ordinary. A dog barked. A truck passed. Someone's dinner smelled of garlic and onions. Lily waited on the steps, sketchbook under one arm. "You ready?" Lily asked. Marianne looked at her daughter, at the fading sky, at the church behind them. "Almost," she said. "For what?" Marianne smiled. "To glow while cracked," Lily groaned. "That was almost good, but then you made it a line. I am growing in holiness, not restraint." Lily laughed and looped her arm through Marianne's. Together they walked home under a sky streaked with gold, and Marianne understood at last that the path to holiness was not a road away from ordinary life. It was ordinary life slowly filled with the light of God until even the cracked places began to shine.